right, chess fans, get ready for today's deep dive. We are going all in on aggressive chess.
Oh, yeah.
We are going to be looking at three of the all-time greats, Garry Kasparov, Mikhail Tal,
Oh, wow.
and Leonid Stein,
Yeah.
and how they use this aggressive style to really just dominate their opponents.
I love it.
And you know what? You don't even have to be like a grandmaster or anything to follow along, because we are going to be breaking down these games
Right.
using Great Attackers by Colin Crouch.
Yeah, this is such a great book. What's really cool about it is that Crouch doesn't just, like recount all the games and everything.
Right.
He really digs into, the psychology behind the attacks.
Yeah.
And, like their decision-making and like the risks they were willing to take.
Exactly. Yeah. And these games are from the 1970s and 80s, so it's a really cool snapshot of that era.
Absolutely.
So let's just jump right into it.
Okay.
You're probably wondering, like, what makes attacking chess so alluring in the first place?
Right.
Like, why not just play it safe and go for the draw?
Well, imagine you're on the chessboard, right?
Okay.
But instead of just kind of slowly maneuvering your pieces around, you're launching a full-on assault.
Wow.
Sacrificing material,
Yeah.
putting immense pressure on your opponent.
Yeah.
It's a calculated gamble.
Yeah.
But the payoff could be huge, a decisive victory.
Right.
There's a thrill in that, right?
It's like a psychological game, like, within the game, right?
That's for sure.
And Crouch actually talked about this, like, how these attackers, they really aimed to disrupt their opponent's plans.
Cool.
And force them into making errors under pressure.
Yeah, like they're not playing the board, they're playing the man.
Exactly. And he actually uses this great term. He calls it the cheapo.
Ah, the cheapo.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this?
Yeah, the cheapo. It's a tactic where a player, even if they're in a weaker position,
Right.
they deliberately inject chaos into the game, hoping to provoke a blunder from their opponent.
Oh, wow.
It's high risk, high reward.
Yeah.
Kind of like a Hail Mary pass in football.
I like that analogy. Yeah, you're betting on the element of surprise and hoping that your opponent cracks under pressure.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about brute force.
No.
There's like cunning and psychological warfare.
Totally.
Involved.
You got to get in their head.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of the specific tools these attackers used.
Okay.
Gambits and sacrifices seem to be a pretty common theme in the book.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Gambits and sacrifices, you can think of them as calculated risks.
Okay.
They're taken to gain the initiative and disrupt your opponent's plans.
Yeah.
It could open up lines for your pieces,
Okay.
expose the enemy king,
Wow.
create all sorts of tactical complications.
So they're really powerful.
They can't be?
Yeah, if you know how to use them.
That's right.
Crouch uses a great example from one of Stein's games where
Oh, yeah.
he sacrifices a pawn early on against Gregorian,
Okay.
and it leads to this incredible back and forth battle.
Right.
And I can only imagine like what that must have felt like for both players.
Oh, I know.
The tension, the uncertainty.
Yeah, like every move matters.
Yeah, the threat of a knockout blow.
Right. Exactly.
At any moment.
It's electric.
Yeah, I think that's what makes aggressive chess so compelling to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Not just for the players, but for the spectators, too.
It's that element of risk.
Right.
You never know what's going to happen next.
Exactly. But even with all this talk about, like, attacks and sacrifices,
Right.
we can't forget about, like, a fundamental element of chess.
Right.
Pawn structure.
Yes, pawn structure is so important.
Yeah, Crouch really emphasizes this.
It's often overlooked, but it's incredibly important for both attack and defense.
Okay, so break that down for me.
Okay, think of it this way. The pawn structure is like the terrain on which the battle is fought.
Okay.
A well-structured pawn formation can provide a solid base for your attack,
Okay.
while weaknesses in your opponent's pawn structure can create targets and opportunities.
So how can recognizing those weaknesses actually help someone improve their game?
Great question.
I mean, how does that translate from theory to practice?
So let's say you're analyzing your opponent's position. You notice they have an isolated pawn,
Yeah.
meaning it's not protected by any other pawns.
I see.
That pawn becomes a target, a potential point of weakness that you can exploit.
Okay.
You might use your pieces to put pressure on that pawn, forcing your opponent to defend it,
Right.
and in doing so, weakening their overall position.
So even these like seemingly small pawn weaknesses
Yeah.
can have this ripple effect across the entire board.
Absolutely. And it's not just about attacking.
Okay.
Understanding pawn structure can also help you defend more effectively.
Gotcha.
For instance, if you notice a weakness in your own pawn structure, you can take steps to shore it up,
Okay.
preventing your opponent from exploiting it.
So it's really a two-way street.
Exactly.
This is starting to make a lot of sense.
Good.
It's like You know, those seemingly simple building blocks
Right.
can actually determine the entire course of the game.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, Crouch talks about Stein's game against Karpov,
Oh, yeah.
where Karpov's careful handling of a compromised pawn structure
Right.
allowed him to successfully defend against Stein's attack.
Yes, that game is a great example of how a strong defender can use pawn structure to their advantage,
Huh?
even against a fierce attacker like Stein.
Wow.
Karpov was known for his positional mastery, and that game is a prime example of that.
All right, so we've talked about the cheapo, we've talked about gambits and sacrifices and
Yeah.
the crucial role of pawn structure.
Yeah.
Now let's dive into the unique style of one of the most enigmatic figures in chess history,
Oh, yes.
Mikhail Tal.
I love Tal.
He was known for his incredibly complex and intuitive style
Yeah.
and his willingness to make sacrifices that just often seemed illogical.
Right, right.
Like, what was he thinking?
Tal was a true original.
Yeah.
He approached chess almost like an art form.
Wow.
His style was all about creating chaos,
Okay.
disrupting his opponent's plans, and generating positions that were incredibly difficult to analyze.
So it sounds like he was kind of like a disruptor.
He was a disruptor, absolutely.
He an innovator.
Yeah, he pushed the boundaries of chess thinking.
Now, Crouch describes a game between Tal and Velimirovich,
Okay.
where Tal makes this surprising pawn sacrifice early on,
Great.
and he calls this game more poker than chess.
Interesting.
What do you think he meant by that?
Well, I think Tal's style was often about creating illusions, bluffing,
Oh, wow.
and pushing his opponents into uncertain territory.
Okay.
He understood that chess is as much about psychology as it is about calculation.
So he wasn't just playing the board.
Right.
He was playing his opponent's mind.
Exactly.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, Tal recognized that even the strongest players have psychological weaknesses,
Right.
and he aimed to exploit those weaknesses,
Oh, I see.
pushing them into uncomfortable situations where they were more likely to make mistakes.
So it wasn't just about finding the best move.
Right.
It was about finding the move that would most unsettle his opponent.
Yes, he was playing mind games, trying to get inside their heads.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and he had this incredible intuition that allowed him to see possibilities that others missed.
Oh.
He wasn't always calculating concrete variations.
Okay.
He was relying on his gut feeling, his deep understanding of the game's dynamics, and his willingness to embrace risk.
So it's like he could see the matrix of the game.
Yeah, the underlying patterns and possibilities that were invisible to others.
But didn't this intuitive style sometimes lead him into trouble?
Of course, telestyle was incredibly demanding,
Yeah.
both mentally and physically.
Right.
It required immense energy, focus, and creativity.
Okay.
And as he got older, his health declined,
Right.
and he couldn't always maintain that same intensity.
Yeah. But even in his later years, he continued to play with flair and imagination.
Oh, yeah.
His legacy as this creative genius and fearless attacker will always be remembered.
Absolutely.
Tell's games continue to inspire and amaze chess players of all levels. He showed us that chess can be this game of art and beauty,
Absolutely.
as well as logic and calculation.
Both.
Yeah, that sometimes the most brilliant moves are the ones that kind of defy conventional wisdom
Right.
and embrace risk and uncertainty.
For sure.
Now, I want to bring you, the listener, into this conversation.
Okay.
Think about a game you played recently.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself drawn to a more aggressive style?
Right.
How did the pawn structure influence your decisions offensively and defensively?
Good question.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about how these grandmaster concepts can be applied to our own games no matter what our skill level is.
Yeah, and how often do you find yourself feeling that psychological pressure when facing a strong attack?
Yeah, it's a real thing.
It is.
And we're going to continue to unpack this fascinating topic
Yes.
in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome.
We'll explore how Kasparov's style evolved over time,
Right.
examine some specific games in more detail,
Okay.
and really just see how all three of these chess giants... Yeah.
Used pawn structure to their advantage.
Awesome. Can't wait. You know, it's fascinating how all three of these players,
Yeah.
with their very different personalities and approaches,
Right.
all kind of converged on this understanding of pawn structure as a weapon.
Right.
Really just shows you how important it is to master this seemingly basic element of chess.
It's true.
Right.
Yeah, we often get so caught up in the excitement of a brilliant sacrifice or a complex tactical sequence
Right.
that we forget about the humble pawn.
Right.
But as we've seen, those pawns can make all the difference,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to launching a successful attack.
Think of it this way. You're building a house.
Okay.
You can have the most intricate design,
Yeah.
the finest materials.
Right.
But if the foundation is weak,
Yeah.
the whole structure is going to crumble.
Right.
In chess, that foundation is the pawn structure.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light here.
Good, good.
So it's not just about mindlessly pushing your pawns forward.
Yeah. It's about understanding how their placement affects the entire board.
Yes.
How they can restrict your opponent's pieces.
Exactly.
Create weaknesses.
Yes.
Open up lines for your own attack.
Exactly. And each player we're discussing today,
Yeah.
Kasparov, Tal, and Stein,
Right.
they all had their own unique ways of manipulating pawn structure to their advantage.
Crouch talks about Kasparov's game against Opushin,
Okay.
where he sacrifices a pawn early on to create this imbalanced position
Right.
that ultimately leads to this really powerful attack.
Yeah.
It seems counterintuitive to give up material when you're trying to attack,
Right.
but it clearly worked in Kasparov's favor.
Kasparov was a master of calculating those kinds of sacrifices.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid to give up material
Yeah.
if it meant gaining a strategic advantage
Right.
or disrupting his opponent's plans.
Okay.
And in this particular game, the pawn sacrifice opened up lines for his pieces,
Okay.
gave him greater control of the center of the
I
board,
see.
and ultimately led to a decisive victory.
So it's almost like he was playing a different game altogether.
Yeah, yeah.
One where material wasn't the only measure of success.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Kasparov understood that sometimes you have to make sacrifices
Right.
to achieve your goals,
Okay.
whether it's in chess or in life.
Wow. That's deep.
Yeah?
Yeah, and he was willing to take those risks
He was.
if he believed they would lead to a better outcome.
Exactly.
So he wasn't just this brilliant tactician.
Right.
He was also a master strategist.
Oh, absolutely.
Always thinking several steps ahead.
Yeah, and that strategic thinking was evident in his understanding of pawn structure.
Right.
He knew how to use his pawns to create weaknesses in his opponent's position,
Okay.
how to exploit those weaknesses,
Right.
and how to coordinate his pieces to maximize their attacking potential.
So really like a holistic approach.
Yeah, he was seeing the whole board.
Now, Crouch also points out that Kasparov wasn't always perfect.
Of course not. No one is.
Yeah, even he made blunders,
Yeah.
especially in his younger years.
Right. No one is immune to mistakes.
Yeah.
Not even a chess prodigy like Kasparov.
Right.
And I think that's an important lesson for all of us.
Okay.
Whether we're playing chess
Yeah,
or navigating the complexities of life,
that's a good
we're
point.
all going to make mistakes, but it's how we learn from those mistakes
Man.
and grow that ultimately matters.
So what can we learn from Kasparov's mistakes?
Well, one key takeaway is the importance of staying focused,
Okay.
even when you have a winning position.
Yeah, you can't let your guard down.
You can't. Crouch describes a game against Majeromov
Okay.
where Kasparov is in a clearly advantageous position,
Right.
becomes careless,
Okay.
and ends up blundering a piece,
Wow.
losing the game in a shocking upset.
Oh, no.
It's a reminder that overconfidence can be our downfall
Right.
and that we need to maintain our concentration
Hey, focus.
until the very end.
It's like that old saying,
Yeah.
it ain't over till it's over.
Exactly. And I think it's also a reminder that even the best of us are human.
Right.
And we're all prone to making errors.
Yeah, no one's perfect.
No one's perfect.
It's how we handle those errors that defines us
Absolutely.
as players and as individuals.
Well said.
Speaking of learning from mistakes,
Yeah.
remember how we talked about Tal's risky style
Yeah.
and how it sometimes backfired?
Right.
It seems like there's this fine line between brilliance and disaster
There is.
when it comes to aggressive chess.
There's this constant tension between soundness and unsoundness in attacking chess.
Okay, explain that to me.
All right. So many brilliant attacking games are technically unsound,
Okay.
meaning they could theoretically be refuted with perfect defense.
Okay.
But in real games, opponents are rarely able to find those perfect defenses under pressure.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just about finding the objectively best move.
Right.
It's about finding the move that will most likely provoke an error from
Yeah.
your opponent,
Exactly.
even if it means taking a calculated risk.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And Tal was a master of exploiting that psychological element of the
Yeah.
game.
He was getting in their heads.
His sacrifices weren't always about concrete material gains,
Okay.
but rather about creating chaos
Right.
and uncertainty,
Okay.
pushing his opponents into unfamiliar territory
Right.
where they were more prone to making mistakes.
I see. So he was playing the player,
He was playing the player.
not just the board.
Exactly.
Now, remember that game against Spassky,
Yes.
where Tal sacrifices a bishop early on?
Oh, yeah.
It seemed like madness at the time.
It did. It did.
But it led to this spectacular attack that completely overwhelmed Spassky.
Yeah.
Do you think Tal calculated that entire sequence?
I don't know if he calculated the whole thing.
Okay.
Tal was known for his incredible intuition,
Right.
and I think that game is a prime example of that.
Okay.
It's unlikely that he saw the entire variation from the beginning,
Right.
but he had this uncanny ability to sense the right moment, to strike,
Oh.
to create chaos, and to trust his instincts.
So, like, almost like a sixth sense.
Yeah, he could feel the flow of the game.
It's like he could see the energy of the position.
Yes.
The potential for an attack.
Right.
Even if it wasn't immediately obvious to others.
He had this remarkable feel for the dynamics of the game,
Yeah.
the ebb and flow of the position.
So he understood that chess is not just about logic and calculation.
It's not. It's also about psychology and intuition.
Now let's shift our focus to Leonid Stein,
Okay.
another master of aggressive chess.
Yeah.
His style was known for its sharp tactical vision and his ability to exploit weaknesses in his opponent's pawn structure.
Yes. Crouch highlights this game. Jatdin played against Grigorian,
Right.
where he sacrifices a pawn early on,
Okay.
opens up lines for his pieces,
Right.
and it leads to this dynamic attack that just overwhelms his opponent.
It's like a classic example of Stein's style.
Yes. He was so good at finding those tactical breakthroughs,
Yeah.
those surprising combinations. That could just turn the tide of the game in an instant.
It's almost like he could see those hidden pathways through the maze of the chessboard.
Yeah, those lines of attack that other players just missed.
But even Stein, with his tactical brilliance,
Yeah,
wasn't invincible.
of course not.
Crouch also mentions Stein's game against Karpov,
Okay.
where Karpov, known for his defensive prowess,
Right.
successfully defends against Stein's attack.
That game is a fascinating study in contrasting styles.
Right.
You've got Stein the aggressor launching this fierce attack,
Right.
and then Karpov the defender patiently parrying each blow,
Right.
waiting for his opportunity to counterattack.
It's a good reminder that even the most aggressive attacks can be thwarted
Yes,
by a well-prepared and resourceful opponent.
that's right.
And it highlights the importance of studying both attack and defense.
Absolutely. You can't truly master one without understanding the other.
Yeah, chess is a game of balance.
It is.
You need to be able to attack and defend,
Yes.
to calculate and intuit, to be both creative and disciplined.
They say?
And by studying the games of these great players,
Yeah.
we can learn to find that balance
Exactly.
in our own games.
I love that.
It's inspiring to think that even us mere mortals
I know, right?
can learn from these chess giants.
We can.
So let me ask you, the listener, this.
Okay.
Have you ever played a game where you felt like you were channeling the spirit of one of these aggressive masters?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you made a daring sacrifice
Right.
or launched a complex attack
Yeah.
that completely surprised your opponent.
That's a good feeling.
What was that experience like for you?
And what have you learned from studying the games of Kasparov, Tal, and Stein?
Yeah.
Have you been able to incorporate any of their ideas
Yeah.
or techniques into your own play?
Right.
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
You know, it's really striking how all three of these chess giants,
Yeah.
with their very distinct styles and approaches,
Right.
all emphasize the importance of pawn structure in their attacks. It just underscores how critical it is
Yeah.
to understand this element, even for those of us who aren't, aiming for grandmaster status.
Exactly.
It's like, it's easy to get caught up in the flashy tactics.
Oh, yeah.
The sacrifices, the all-out assault.
Like a big attack.
But those tactics are going to be much more effective when they're built on a solid foundation.
That's true.
And, as we've been saying, that foundation is pawn structure.
Pawn structure, yeah.
I was thinking about it. You could have like the most brilliant attacking plan in the world.
Right.
But if your pawn structure is weak,
Yeah.
it's like building a house on sand.
Yeah. It's all going to come crashing down.
It's not going to hold up under pressure.
Later.
And the beauty of pawn structure is that it's something that like every chess player,
Yeah.
regardless of skill level,
Yeah.
can learn to manipulate and control
Totally.
by understanding, those principles we've talked about,
Yeah.
creating and exploiting weaknesses,
Right.
opening lines, coordinating your pieces.
Yeah. You can really enhance your attacking prowess.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's connect this back to our listeners.
Okay.
What are some key takeaways
Yeah.
that they can apply to their own games?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's just crucial to develop a deep appreciation for the strategic importance of pawn structure.
Yeah, don't just move your pawns mindlessly.
Just shuffle them around.
Yeah, think about how their placement affects the overall dynamics of the board.
Yeah, the flow of the game, the energy.
And as we've seen, from the games of Kasparov, Tellin, and Stein,
Right.
aggressive chess isn't just about these reckless attacks.
No, it's much more nuanced than that.
Yeah, it's about calculated risks, strategic planning,
Right.
and understanding your opponent's psychology.
It's a mind game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about finding that balance between boldness and restraint,
Okay.
between intuition and calculation,
Right.
and learning to exploit your opponent's weaknesses,
Yeah.
whether they're in their pawn structure,
Right.
their psychological state. Okay.
Or their overall strategic plan.
It's like a multi-layered game.
It is.
I think another important takeaway is that even the greatest players make mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen examples of, Kasparov blundering and winning positions,
Right.
Tao's risky style sometimes backfiring,
Yeah.
Stein being outmaneuvered by Karpov's, you know, defensive mastery.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah, chess is a game of constant learning and improvement.
It really is.
And by studying the games of these masters,
Right.
analyzing their successes and their failures,
Exactly.
we can gain such valuable insights into the game's complexities
Yeah.
and really develop our own skills.
Couldn't agree more.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of aggressive chess,
Okay.
I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought.
Right?
Does the enjoyment of this style of chess
Yeah.
come from the sheer brilliance of the attack itself,
Okay.
or from the suspense of seeing whether the opponent can withstand the pressure?
It's a great question.
It is. Each of these players brought their own, unique brand of aggression to the board.
Absolutely.
Kasparov with his relentless calculations.
All right.
Tao with his intuitive brilliance.
Mhm.
Stan with his sharp tactical vision.
All unique.
Yeah, I encourage you to explore Crouch's book further.
Yes.
Delve into these thrilling games
Yeah.
and discover which style resonates most with you.
It's a great read.
And as you're analyzing those games, pay attention to the pawn structures,
Right.
the sacrifices, the psychological battles that unfold.
Yeah, the mind games.
Think about how you can apply these principles to your own game,
Absolutely.
how you can become a more formidable attacker,
Yes.
and ultimately a more well-rounded chess player.
That's the goal.
So until next time, keep playing, keep learning,
Yeah.
and keep pushing the boundaries of your own chess creativity.
Couldn't have said it better myself.